call on Rabbi Tannenbaum to introduce our speaker.
It's my pleasure to bring you now a great scholar and leader in our movement, Rabbi Meirovich.
Rabbi Tannenbaum, Boker Tov, Rabbi Tannenbaum asked me specifically this morning to talk about Tefillin because of the worldwide rap, and that what we're doing here, of course, is being done all around the world. What does Tefillin mean? Don't be shy. It comes from, it's from tefillah, which we translate as prayer. But that's really also, that's the English translation. Well, the ending of the word, the nun, makes it into an Aramaic word, but of course the original would come out of the, you want to hand that out, yeah? Would come out of the, thanks, would come out of the Hebrew. And tefillah, or tefillah, is as close, that we're going to get to the word. So then, what is tefillah? We translate it as, I'm going to daven, or tefillot, prayers. But that's really, that's an English thing. That's an English translation. The word tefillah, comes from two possible roots. One root from the root pe. Actually, I brought up the blackboard. Right. Can I take this off? Sure. It's pe lamed hey, which we get the word pliya, which is wonder, like awe. Awesomeness, wonder. So there's the idea here also, that's one idea, but the word also means to distinguish from. And the word is specifically used in the book of Exodus that we are distinguished from other peoples. So our manner of praying, if you will, or of relating to God is different, is distinguished from that of other peoples. What you're looking at now is something that I'll get to at the end, so just don't look at it now, otherwise you'll miss everything else. Okay, so one sense of Pei Lamed Hey is to distinguish, essentially to distinguish between the Jewish way of doing things and the non-Jewish way of doing things, or if you will, another, as I said, the possibility of wonder. Another possible root for tefillah is your Pei Lamed Palal, which means to judge. And so there we get the word lehit palel, meaning to judge oneself, or to meditate, which really comes very close to what I think most of us would associate the root of tefillah. It's a form of doing self-discovery or meditation, judging oneself. Okay, so that's, and by the way, it's interesting, we get the word in modern Hebrew, the word plili, which is criminal. Right? Because a criminal is being judged. So it's a plili case, meaning it is a case that's being criminally adjudicated. So it's the same. It's interesting that from the word tefillah, to judge yourself, we actually can extend it into modern Hebrew to connect it to criminality. In that sense, I guess all of us are in some sense criminals. Right? What do we? That's true, right? Because we all say, "Chatanu, pashanu, avinu," right? So we're judging ourselves constantly, and in that sense, standing before God, we are not complete. So we have to judge ourselves on a daily basis.
You think it has something to do with a plea of guilty?
A plea, interesting. A plea, interesting.
A plea of guilty.
Yeah, I know, but a plea of guilty. But are you saying the word plea maybe has a connection here to palal? I mean, you know that lots of words in English, derive from the Hebrew, like abracadabra. That's an Aramaic expression. The word camel, right? ABC, camel. Aleph Bet Gimel, Gamal, Gamal, camel. There's your connection there. Okay? Okay, next. What are tefillin called in English?
It's not
Well, it's from the Greek. I mean, it's what? Philactery. Philactery. Okay, that's good. Where does that term first appear? Well, it's from the Greek, so where would it?
Yeah, you were right.
Who?
I was right. I just said it sounds Greek to me.
It is Greek. It is Greek to you. It's Greek. But my question is, where does that Greek word come? Where does the word tefillin get translated into the Greek as phylactery? Where does it appear? It appears in the New Testament, in the Christian Bible. Right? So when they translate tefillin, they're translating it as phylactery. Now, next question. What does it mean? I'm glad my colleagues, the rabbis here, are not answering. I really do fully appreciate your cooperation.
I don't think they know.
No, they know. All right, I'll give you a hint. No, I'll give you a hint. Since this is an adult crowd, I don't see too many under... How old are you, young man? 12? Right, then close your ears. What's a prophylactic?
An encompassing safety device.
Right. Prophylactic and phylactery come from the exact same root, meaning to protect, meaning to shield.
Doctors use the whole prophylactic approach.
Exactly. A prophylactic approach is a shielding, a defensive. The actual word phylactery really means a fort. F-O-R-T. A fort. A defense. And it comes from philocine, which means to defend or to guard. And therefore, in heaven's name, how in heaven's name does the word tefillin come to mean a protective device, a shield? Yes?
I was just thinking the box, the covering of the scroll, protecting the scroll.
That would be a Jewish answer. That's very good. It's very good. That's a very good Jewish answer. That is not what the that's not why it's called that in the New Testament, in the Christian Bible. But you're right in that sense. Physically, no, they meant something else. It's used in almost a pejorative sense when it's translated as as a phylactery. It's an amulet. It's a magical charm. In other words, when the Gentile community looked at tefillin to somebody walking down the street, or they saw a Jew wearing tefillin, they assumed that it was an amulet. It was a magical charm, a defense mechanism to protect against the evil spirit. Okay? Which is, of course, is a complete misnomer, because tefillin have nothing whatsoever to do. It has no connections to shadim, to demons or evil spirits. But that in the ancient world, when someone wore, amulets, it's no different today. How many are wearing shields, Magen David, or wearing a mezuzah scroll? Remember when I was growing up, that was the big thing. You wore on a necklace. Why? Well, it was a means of identification, yes. But if you went back to if you really wanted to do an etymological search as to really where it comes from, some kind of a protective device. So that's what the Gentile world thought of Jews who wore tefillin. They were protecting themselves against some kind of evil spirit. And why? Because that's what the world was all about. You had to protect yourself. And yet, that is not what tefillin are all about. Hardly so. Because the most vulnerable individuals in society are exempt from wearing tefillin. The ones who would be in most need of protection are the ones who are exempt. For example, slaves, women, and children in the ancient world. Or someone is forbidden to wear tefillin if you go into the bathroom or if you go onto a cemetery. So it has nothing to do with protection, warding off the evil spirit, as it were. Okay? Next question. In the Shema, in the first paragraph of the Shema, we read that you're supposed to, put the tefillin, of course, bein einecha, but it's the word before that is Totafot, bein einecha. Now, first of all, so we translate that as, what are Totafot? I gave this exam question to my students in Israel. I said, anyone who can answer this question is exempt from writing the paper for the course. And I sweated it through for the next 30 seconds. And they finally didn't come up with the answer, so. Because it creases your forehead.
No, yeah, are the Totafot creases in your forehead?
No, they're not. They're not. So what is Totafot? We translate it, if you look at the translation, it says as frontlets between your eyes. Right? Frontlets. I don't know, what does that mean?
Isn't that the crack between?
What's that? No. Also, bein einecha, also, we know that bein einecha means your forehead because it's based on a verse in Deuteronomy where it's very clear that between your eyes means your forehead, okay? That we know from chapter 14, verse 1 of Deuteronomy. But we come back to Totafot. So, no one? Ich weiß nicht. Okay, Totafot, I'll give you 3 explanations, all of which you will see are connected. In Arabic, T-U-F, right? T-U-F, tuf, means to encircle. To encircle. In Aramaic, totefta, which is close enough, totafot. In Aramaic, totefta means an armband or a turban. And in Mishnaic Hebrew, we have in the tractate of Shabbat, where it's referring to women and what they're allowed to wear and not to wear on Shabbat, we have the same word used, totefta, meaning a woman's headband encompassing her head from ear to ear. So what is Totafot? Bein einecha. It means that you're putting on these objects, and in the case of women, it could have very much have meant some kind of jewelry. Totafot, bein einecha. The tefillin are being encircled around your head. Now, in what form that took, we really don't know. It might even, if I want to be absolutely literal about it, in the earliest format, it may not even have included the boxes that we have today. But today we have the box, and then it is encircled by the ritzuah. But perhaps, maybe, it meant that the passages that come to be included in the tefillin may have somehow been maybe one piece of parchment that was used as a kind of a headband encircling the head. Possibly. We just don't know. Okay? So now you know what totafot are. It comes from the root to encircle, an armband, headband, whatever. Okay? And now we come to what's included in tefillin. Right? So we have a shel yad and we have a shel rosh. The hand and the head. So there are there are passages from the Torah. Right? What are the passages? I'm not asking you to give me here a detailed answer. There are 4 passages. Right?
This is your special ed class you're going to have to remember.
All right. 4 passages. 2 from the book of Exodus and 2 from the book of Deuteronomy. Okay. And on the hand, you have these 4 passages on one piece of parchment. In the head, you have the 4 passages, each in a separate cubicle. All right, there are 4 cubicles, 4 compartments, and these 4 passages are individualized. Whereas in the shel yad, they're in one. All 4 in one cubicle. Now the four passages, if you are taken from, one is Exodus chapter 13, verses 1 to 10, and then the next passage is Exodus 13, verses 11 to 16, so it's verses 1 to 10, and then 11 to 16, chapter 13, and then Deuteronomy 6, verses 4 to 9, which everyone knows. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, the passage of the Shema. And the next passage, which we also recite in the Shema, which is V'hayayim Shema, if you obey these commandments, which is Deuteronomy chapter 4. All right, so these are the four passages. Now, if you put them all together, do they make some kind of statement? They do. Some kind of statement about the essence of Judaism. Now, it's true, you could have picked others. The rabbis could have picked others. But if you look at these particular four verses and you put them together, even in the order that they're in, you'll see that they sort of say something about Judaism. And by the way, all of these passages, these four passages, contain the same expression, that you shall put certain objects that are bound as a sign on your arm and as frontlets between your eyes. These four passages all contain those words. Now, so what is the essence? The first passage speaks about remembering the Exodus. You cannot be a Jew without realizing that at every turn, every step you take, the Exodus is engraved in our consciousness. And the essence of the Exodus, of course, is freedom. To be a Jew, first thing is to be free, physically free. But physically free for a purpose. And what's the purpose of being free from the perspective of the Torah? This you may find somewhat surprising. It's in this next passage. First passage says, be free. The next passage in Exodus says, free to do what?
Follow you.
No. No. To go into the land of Israel. You are free in order to be able to have the experience or privilege of anticipating to go into the land. That is why you're free. I once wrote a paper a number of years ago discussing the Haggadah, the Pesach Haggadah. And if you compare, and I called the Haggadah in some respects, even though it ends with the words L'shana haba Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem, I mean, there are lots of additions in the Haggadah that are different from different periods. But if you look at the core passages that make up the Haggadah, the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 5, it talks about Avadim Ayinu, right, that passage. And if you read the Haggadah, what's the purpose of, we were slaves in Egypt, and then what happened? And then we became free. And that's where the Haggadah ends. If you go, however, to Deuteronomy, where those words are recited, you will see that that's not the end of the passage. The end of the passage is truncated, it is cut off in the Haggadah. If you continue on reading, you'll see that the purpose of the Exodus is freedom for what purpose? To go into the land. So the Torah is a Zionist document everywhere you turn. And the word, and that's what the rabbis are saying here. You are free in order to experience one day, to anticipate going to the land of Israel and living in the land of Israel. That's what it means to live a completely 101% Jewish life. The next passage, the third passage, which Shema Yisrael, which what would you say the overarching idea of the Shema is? Only one God, monotheism. Now it's accepting the kingship of God. So think about it. I am free to have the privilege of living in the land of Israel, and it is there that I will put into practice the notion of God's kingship of monotheism. And how then do I give expression to my monotheism? With the fourth passage. the last passage, which is V'hayam Shema, which speaks about the observance of all the commandments. So there you've got it. That is the essence of an ideal Judaism. Freedom to go into the land, to live a ethical life under monotheism, which means observing the totality of the commandments that it's possible to live in your own homeland. That's the essence of Judaism. That's what's put into the passages of Tefillin. Yes?
I have a question, and it's on the timeline. If this is Talmudic, and all the Jews and the Talmud comes out of Israel around 4,000 BC, 3,000 BC, I don't know, not a scholar. Why would I can see it commanding us to go to Israel now when there's Jews in diaspora? What Jews were out of Israel back then when that was written? Commanding you to go back into it.
I'm not sure that the tradition of Torah, goes back a long time, and even if we just look at the without going into archaeology and history and when certain documents were written, I teach a whole course on that. So, but that's like a whole other thing. But if you even just look at the Torah itself from the perspective of Abraham, right, who's the first Jew, and we can timeline Abraham's patriarchal period somewhere around 1800, 1700 BCE. So already you have Lech lecha me'eretz lecha, go forth from this land to the land I will show you. So already we have the notion of leaving to go to the land as a very early memory in the consciousness of our people. So it's very, very early. Okay? Yes?
Can you explain why in the head scrolls are separated from the heart, whereas in the
Absolutely I can. The answer is, we don't know. And which leads me, by the way, to the next question, which is the answer is we don't know. The whole business of how do you prepare the tefillin, how they're actually made, and why these passages, and when to wear them, all the laws relating to tefillin, okay? We simply are not told. All we have is the tradition that says everything relating to tefillin is called halacha l'Moshe Sinai, which it would literally means it is a tradition going all the way back to Moses at Sinai. In terms of modern scholarship, what that means is that it is a tradition so old that we no longer are able to trace its development. But it has to be very, very old. But there are no explanations. Today I give you all kinds of efforts, but that's modern stuff. We just don't know, as my kids would say, we just don't know. Like I asked I remember my daughter Alina, who's now a mother, when we were in Israel, and she was a young kid, and so I said to her, I asked her a question, she said, with her English, right? She stepped off the boat like a greenie. We just don't know. And that's a fact. We just don't know. But it's very old. In fact, so it's interesting, you would think that the word tefillin would be mentioned, you say the Talmud. Well, it's actually not mentioned in the Mishnah. The Mishnah, which is sort of the first layer of rabbinic tradition, 3rd century, edited in the 3rd century of CE, there's not one dimension. Tefillin is not mentioned. The earliest place it's mentioned is in the Talmud, in the Gemara, which is even later. So Rambam was asked, how come? Maimonides was asked, how come? He says, well, because everybody knew. You didn't have to, give explanation. Everybody sort of knew. I'm not sure that that's correct, but we just don't know. Okay?
That's where the expression kachach must come from in Hebrew, eh?
The what is it?
Kachach.
Kacha. Oh, yeah, kacha. Kacha is the way it is. Kacha.
Just don't know.
Yeah.
My Meirovitch used to tell me if I always asking questions and she didn't know the answers, so she would tell me, I'm sure your Zayda said the same thing. A shaila is treif.
A shaila is treif.
If they didn't know the answer.
Shema Yisrael.
Yes.
What is Yisrael? Women and men.
But the people.
People.
Yeah, sure.
So how is it that there's no concentration as far as women are concerned?
Well, first of all, I would say that the Torah is a patriarchal document. It comes out of a society that is patriarchal. And so, the place of women was not one of equal status with men in that era. And, the rabbis are, even the Bible is very concerned about it. My general theory about these issues about, the Torah is not egalitarian and all of that, which happens to be a fact. One thing that I'm very convinced of, vis-a-vis this question of women's place, is that in comparison, when you compare the Torah with other civilizations surrounding, Israel, really comes off very well by comparison. In other words, we have to understand that when we live in a society, we generally follow the norms of society. And then what's interesting then is to see where the Bible itself fits in along that line. And unquestionably, the Torah accords more rights to women within the framework of its own reality than other surrounding societies, hands down. And I could spend the whole session, which I do in Yerushalayim, teaching the issue of the sota, the woman who's accused of adultery, right? Chapter 5 in the book of Numbers. You see that, if you study that passage, you'll see that what the rabbis, and I really don't have time to go into it, if you want to ask me in the library, you come, I'll deal with it. What the rabbis are trying, what the Bible is trying to do is to prevent a lynch. A lynch. That the husband is so angry at his wife, he's prepared to lynch her on the accusation of adultery. And what the Bible is setting out to do is to protect the woman against the anger, perhaps unjustified anger, of her husband. That's an example of where I'm coming from when I look at the issue of women's roles and so on. Let me go on with some questions, okay? Right. Okay. Which hand do you put tefillin on? The hand tefillin. Well, so we got two opinions. What hand? You said left.
I think it's the weaker.
It's the weaker. Okay.
The opposite of your dominant hand.
Okay. The really correct answer is your weaker hand. However, because most people are right-handed, it goes on their weaker hand, which happens to be their left hand, which happens to be near the heart. And then we have got explanations. See what happens? The original, I'll show you in a second why. The original is the weaker hand. But because most people are right-handed, it goes on the weaker hand, which is the left, which is near the heart. And then you have all kinds of interpretation. Well, so you serve God with your head, intellectually, and with your feelings, with your heart, which is very nice. It's a great midrash. But that's created after the fact, forgetting the fact that the real purpose has to do with putting on your weaker hand. Why your weaker hand? No, because it's based on, remember I said the 4 passages? Well, one of those passages in the book of Exodus, it says, you shall put it on your yadcha. What's yadcha? Wonderful. I don't have. Just give me.
Right here.
Oh, I do have. I apologize. You're hired.
He's trying to get retired.
All right, so. Right, yadcha. Right, that's your hand. Your hand. That's how your hand is spelled. However, in early Hebrew, and we know this, by the way, from the Dead Sea Scrolls, particularly from the Dead Sea Scrolls, that the other way that you write yadcha is like this. Instead of the final chaf, it's yad cha. And that's how it is written. If you want to say yad cha in early Hebrew, you don't spell it this way. You spell it this way. You write full, like you spell it out. You sound it out. So, the rabbis, because they saw that this was, of the 4 times that you have Yadcha, this is the exception to the rule, they revocalized Yadcha to this. They revocalized it to Cheha, which means you're weak, weaker hand. Yad Cheha. You know the expression when Moses dies, at the end of Deuteronomy, it says that he was full of vigor and hadn't lost any of his strength. That's the word that's used, Cheha. Okay? So that's the original explanation. Putting it on your weaker hand. My weaker hand is my left hand, close to my heart. All the explanations flow from there. By the way, what percentage of the world is left-handed? 10%.
So let me ask you, would
Yeah.
a left-handed person put a tefillin on his right hand?
That's right.
He should.
I do.
Okay.
I'm left-handed.
All
I
right.
put it on my right hand.
So I just
So
wanted-
it's the right hand. And if it's from the left hand, it's not the right hand.
all right.
Okay? All right. We're coming towards the close, more or less. Okay, why don't we put tefillin on Shabbat?
Putting on tefillin is an ought, and for it to add some holiness to the day.
Right.
Shabbat has its own holiness.
Okay, so Shabbat is called an ot. Ot hiliolam. Shabbat is a sign, and the tefillin are also called ukshartem liot. You shall wrap it as a sign. You got one sign, you got another sign, so therefore the Shabbat is the sign, and you therefore don't need another sign on Shabbat because Shabbat takes the place of tefillin as a sign of the relationship. Okay? What name of God is spelled out when putting on tefillin? Let's do it. Okay.
I am that I am.
When I do, no, not a yeah. That's another sermon. By the way, the best article on Eheyeh Asher Eheyeh, I will be. You know, when Moses comes to the bush and he says, "Well, what's my name?" and the people, what shall I tell them your name is? And you know, I will. Somehow we translate, "I am that I am." Right? An article was written in 1954 that's still being quoted in the world of scholarship on the meaning, the technical meaning of that term. And the rabbi who wrote it, his name is Irwin Shield. He wrote that article in 1954 and it is still being quoted today. Because Irwin had a chance to go into scholarship and chose to become a congregational rabbi. Okay, so the name is Shaddai, right? Shaddai, the Almighty. That's the name we spell out. When you make your shin, right? When you put right? You have the shin, right? Here, right here, the shin. If you look at the nape of your neck where the tefillin come down by the nape of your neck, and you look at the way the knot is tied, that's a dalid. And when you tie your finger, right? Your finger gets bent, right? This finger gets bent. That's your yud. Or if you want, it's also your dalid and your yud. So it's the shin and the bending is both a dalid and a yud. So it's Shaddai, the Almighty. Finally, 2 last questions. How many times do we wrap? 7 times. So, why 7 times? The answer is, we just don't know. However, you know, Jewish interpretation being that it is, you can give me all kinds of good explanations. You know, 7 times is 7 days of the week. It represents the covenant. I'm committed to God, you know, every day of the week. Or even if you want, a nice explanation is in connection with the Sheva Brachot, the 7 blessings, the marriage blessings that you recite under the chuppah. Why? Because the 7 times represents the 7 blessings under the chuppah, and when you put on tefillin, the words that you recite are from Hosea. I will betroth you ve'erastich li leolam. I will betroth you unto me forever. in justice and righteousness forever, and this is a relationship that you establish with God, and so you're kind of being married to the ideals and the values of what God expects in a relationship of love. 7 times. And finally, which is why I handed out the piece of paper to you, you'll notice that, let me ask the question first, and then I'll try to give you the answer. If you look at the tefillin of the head, if you look at the tefillin of the head, you'll notice that it has shin that's embossed. You seen that? You'll notice one side is embossed with a regular shin, 3 of the regular shin. Look at the other shin. You ever noticed it? It doesn't have 3. It doesn't have 3. It has 4. It's written with 4 strokes, not 3. One is written with 3, and one is written with 4. Why?
The total is 7.
We just don't know. No, we do. we think we know. We think we know. We think we know. We're not sure. We think we know. But here's a possible explanation. If you look at this passage in front of you, make sure you're holding it up right. You see the stuff that's there on the left? See? And what you have is a translation. I mean, in modern Hebrew script, right? What does it look like to you there? Anybody recognize what you're looking at? Well, first of all, what you're looking at is the earliest known piece of Hebrew writing prior to the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in 1947. But up until that time, in 1902, I think it was, 2 women turned up with this. Actually, it wasn't. No, it was a guy by the name of Nash. That's why it's called the Nash Papyrus. This was the earliest known piece of Hebrew writing known up to that time.
Something about Shabbat, right?
Well, yes, but what are you looking at? Look how it starts out. Anochi Adonai Elohecha asher hotzeiticha me'eretz Mitzrayim. It's the 10 Commandments. 10 Commandments. You have the 10 Commandments, by the way, in a form that is not the form that we have today. It's a format that is a combination of both Exodus and Deuteronomy, because it's repeated. So this is a combination of the 2. And in fact, what it really is, it's the Hebrew version of the Greek, the Septuagint. The Septuagint is the Greek translation. This is the closest in Hebrew translation of the Septuagint's version of the 10 Commandments. So we have the 10 Commandments, and then you'll take a look at line 23. What's there towards the end of the line? 23, 24. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Right? So what are we looking at? We're looking at the 10 Commandments followed by the recitation of the Shema. Now, in other words, that's an authentic tradition. And we know that because if you look at the English at the bottom of the page, where it says Tamid, that's the tractate of Tamid, of offering the daily sacrifice, you'll notice that this represents the earliest order of davening, if you will, that we have in our tradition. And it was recited by the priests, not by the people, but by the priests themselves. You'll notice what it says, what the order of how they davened. What they do? They recited the 10 Commandments, and then they went on to recite the Shema. So this is an authentic piece of tradition that we're looking at, namely that it was customary to recite the 10 Commandments followed immediately by the recitation of the Shema. Question: how come we don't do that today? You're looking at something that's very authentic. not only, in other words, the Talmud corroborates, or the Nash Papyrus corroborates what is being written in the Talmud. And this piece of papyrus goes back to the Hasmonean period. So we're looking at somewhere around 150 BCE. So it was a very authentic early tradition, which then is certified by the rabbis in the Talmud. How come then we don't recite the Ten Commandments today? By the way, in the early Reform service, they did do that. And people, that's not authentic. It's very authentic to recite the Ten Commandments and then the Shema. But we don't do it. Yes?
Could it be because we have the Ten Commandments on the Aron Kodesh?
No.
Wherever you go and you should?
No. No, that might be an interesting, by the way, that might be a very interesting observation, because it may very well be that because we don't do it, that there was, but in our historical consciousness, we should be doing it, or we did do it, and this is a way in which we give expression, to at least that tradition. Maybe. It's connected to the 3 and the 4 to the Shin. Why? Because I'll give you the explanation in a second, but notice if it's 3, then it means that the Shin represents Shema. 3, the regular Shin. It's 3, not 4. What would be the 4? If it were 4, you would say the Ten Commandments, because the Ten Commandments was authentic. The reason we don't recite, there are 2 explanations. The Talmud says we don't recite Ten Commandments today because of a group of heretics, whom we really don't know who they were, who said that only the Ten Commandments were given by God on Sinai, and nothing else. Along came the rabbis and said, if that's what you say, and we don't want that idea to spread, we are going to eliminate the Ten Commandments, which you think is the only thing given. We say the whole Torah was given, so we eliminate the Ten Commandments specifically in order to stress that it's more than the Ten Commandments that was given. Now that explanation has been holding water for a long time, but it's a very late explanation, because that explanation comes out of a very, 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 very late tradition in the Talmud. I would like to suggest, and it's not me, the person who's suggesting it is Rabbi Reuven Kimmelman, who is probably one of the world's authorities on the history of the Siddur, teaches at Brandeis University, has suggested that the reason why ultimately in a tug of war between the Ten Commandments and the Shema, that the Shema won out, is because the Shema essentially includes, in its essence, everything that is included in the Ten Commandments plus. Ten Commandments only says Ten Commandments. But if you read the Shema and the first verses of the Shema, and you shall observe, and then all the rest of the Shema, it says you shall observe all the commandments. So if you're going to have to be reminded about observing all the commandments, I don't really need any reference to only observing part of them. That is a modern explanation as to why it is no longer being recited. But once again, we just don't know. Okay? Anything else that I can help you with this morning? No?
Yes.
Yes. What? We'll take one question.
All right. We generally look at stones and see that they're made of leather.
Yes.
Why are they made of
We
leather?
just don't know.
Okay. And why are they black?
We just don't know.
And why cubes?
Ditto.
And why do the Hasids wear one that you need a crane to wear? The big, huge things.
That's just probably, ego. That's just ego. That's
Yeah,
ego.
all right.
Very, very practical.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very practical. It happened to me today.
Yes.
Your film get loose.
Yes.
During the service.
Yes.
What are you
Rewind them.
supposed to-
Rewind them.
How do you rewind it?
Take them off. Put them back
Just
on.
you just take off the arm when it's
Yeah,
the arm
absolutely.
again.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, just a quick thank you for Rabbi Meirovitch
Sunnybrook.
Next Shabbat, by the way, the men's club is running the Sunnybrook service for patients at Sunnybrook Hospital. It's a wonderful tradition. Everyone gets something out of it. Actually, the people who come from the men's club to run a service probably get more out of it than the patients. The patients get a lot, but the people coming get even more. So if you have the opportunity to come, I believe it starts at 9:30, 10 o'clock Saturday morning. Parking is free. There's an augmented kiddush after the davening, as prepared by the people at the men's club, and it's really a worthwhile experience. One of the highlights of the year, as far as I'm concerned. Now, I just want to thank Rabbi Meirovitch here for a number of things. First of all, I want to make one observation. It would be nice if the current davening on Saturday was just the 10 Commandments and Shema Yisrael. Then the rabbis could get a chance to make a nice speech, and we could learn something also, which is one of the reasons why I come to shul, because I would like to learn something when I show up. And so maybe that's something we can send to the advisory committee or something.
We've been saying that all along. The longer the sermon,
the better, right? And I would just like to say that I personally, I'm a very lucky fellow, because I've known Rabbi Meirovitch long before he was Rabbi Meirovitch, and I can tell you that.
I dated his wife.
Well, I wasn't going to say that. He's one guy I didn't worry about. After all, he's a rabbi. Anyway, let me just say this.
How do you interpret lynching again?
Yeah. Let me just say also that it seems to me that one of the reasons why we put on tefillin every morning is so that we could remind ourselves that we're Jewish, and we could stay Jewish, and what's important about being Jewish, etc., etc., etc. And that would be an apt comparison with Rabbi Meirovitch here, because for all of us here, we struggle to be Jews. We struggle to have an identity, we struggle with our questions, and we struggle with our commitment, and we struggle with our faithfulness and all of that. But we're lucky because we have people like Rabbi Meirovitch who have dedicated their life to the object of keeping us and teaching us and doing for us. And I can't tell you how thankful I am for people like him, and for him specifically. So we're all very lucky to listen to him this morning. I hope everyone takes the opportunity to avail themselves of the other opportunities to talk to and ask questions of Rabbi Meirovitch. And thank you for coming this morning. Oh, by the way, I should thank everybody who's helped put this program together. Harry Cooper, Larry Rachlin, Ted Bluestein, the catering department, Barney Seidner in the communications department, Jerry Grammer in the bulletin, and Art Andrews and his grandson, and what more can I say?